Hello? Hello? Is anybody out there?
It's the Quick Hit Weekly with Tom and Will.
Will, my man.
Tom, what's up, buddy?
Hey, man, I always look forward to this time of week because I know I get to chat with you.
Yeah, man.
And today is no different.
Yeah.
So I know usually we kind of spit these things off the cuff, but I read something today that I want to throw at you because I feel like it's exactly talking about what we're trying to do here, and it's saying that it's not possible. And so, yes, all right.
Well,
So,
first,
question.
we're
Go
doing
ahead.
it.
We're doing it, right?
Yeah.
But so it'll make sense in a second.
Okay.
Have you seen Ted Lasso?
Why does that sound so familiar?
It's a series on Apple Plus.
Oh, no. People have referenced it before and I've looked it up, but I've never watched it.
Okay. So, just a quick background. Ted Lasso is about an American football coach who gets hired to coach a soccer club in England.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes over there with no knowledge of the game, whatever, gets thrown in. He's supposed to be a joke, and it winds up being a feel-good story. But the whole point of it is, and I won't give any spoilers for any people who haven't seen it or whatever, but um, everything he does, all the changes he makes, everything that he's able to accomplish is done through kindness,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I read an article today that the season finale just came out. So the season wrapped. I think it might be the end of the entire show. It's 3 seasons long. But this article is called Ted Lasso and the Fantasy of Soft Masculinity.
Soft. Well, first off, I don't like the sounds of that at all, my friend. But
Yes.
go on.
So I'm going to read from this article. This is in the New York Times in the, what's it called? The Modern Man section of the New York Times.
Okay.
So the subhead is a fan favorite show wraps up a series in which the mostly male characters became more vulnerable, empathetic, and comfortable being themselves with other men. Right? So this is exactly the mission that we are trying to drive
Right.
is to provide an example of how two guys, random boneheads like us, can have meaningful, deep conversations beyond just how's the weather, how's your sports team doing kind of crap, right?
Freaking small talk, which I
Yes.
despise.
Right. So learning to do life together in a way that you actually connect with another human being. So in this article, it says, the men in sports television and movies are often wounded and broken, and sport is the arena of redemption, the thing that is going to put them back together. So then it references a few options, and then it says, but the promise of Lasso is different. Where we are used to seeing men do battle for connection, this universe assumes a more tender arrangement. The men in Lasso can try to isolate themselves and steep in their problems alone, but they will find that their safety net of other men will come barging in, ready to do what it takes to help. Lasso is a show built on softness, but this is a fantasy. And to me, I'm curious your thoughts. Like my initial thought is it's a fantasy if you don't have an imagination. So it's kind of the antithesis of a fantasy. I think the reality is it's possible, but it is a tough challenge for all of us to make it a reality, right? It's not a finger snap solution that men are going to start talking and letting out their emotions in a safe way without using violence, but learning how to harness that and to work through issues. That takes time and it takes a mindset of willingness to try it. And I think it takes overcoming the belief that that is not masculine, that the only way to be masculine is to be tough, violent, stoic, either letting it out violently or holding it in to the
Hmm.
detriment of your person. What do you think of the notion that that is a fantasy?
I call shenanigans. And I don't think that it has to be that hard either. Um, I mean, I feel like you and I just kind of stumbled upon this, right? And so it can be as simple as go make a friend. If you don't have one, go make a friend, right? And talk to them. Start with easy stuff, stuff that makes you angry. Oh, I'm an angry man. That's ridiculous, right? But you'll just naturally talk about that. Ah, man, this blah blah whatever did this, and I was gonna that do. All that crap, right? And so you're sharing frustrations, you're sharing emotion. Maybe it's just not, it's not sadness or fear or something like that. Because really, I think, when you talk about stigmas around emotion, it's always fear and sadness or things like that men tend to steer away from. But we identified this, right, as a good thing, right, as a positive outlet for us, and so we started being intentional about it, right? And a lot of value from my perspective has come from that. While all that's going on, I've been on this path or pursuing this path of transparency and openness. I would for a period of time I was very much closed off, and I wanted everybody to think I was the biggest, baddest, whatever, or just a hard ass, right? Um, and so I've been trying to be more transparent and open for a long time, even before we kind of intentionally started being more open with one another, right? Sharing worries and fears and things of that nature. And through the course of that, as this, we reaped more of the benefits, in our relationship. I became more aware of what was actually going on, and I realized that other people, other guys, just started opening up to me more and more and more and sharing more stress or things that they would hide. And I think it just boils down to being open and being real. And so maybe for some people that is hard, but you don't have to snap a finger. You don't have to turn a switch. Just start small. Have a relationship, have a friend and start by talking about things.
Yeah, I think a lot of men will listen to this and think I have friends, I have guys that I talk to, but what we're talking about is a little bit deeper, right? To be able to, I think about my days, my many, many days, my years in a CrossFit gym,
Hmm.
living there 6 to 8 hours, if not more, a day,
Yeah.
7 days a week
Same thing
as
for
a
me,
coach
just
and
a
a
commercial
trainer.
gym.
Right. So coaching, training, being an athlete ourselves. Um, but the people that we would see every day, there's very few of them that in that time I would have considered sharing true concerns, worries, anxieties, that kind of stuff with.
Hmm.
So I think the bridge that needs to be completed is going from having people in your life to having people that you can truly connect with. And the first time I truly, outside of just like, you know, how, I guess let's start with this. How long would it take you meeting someone new to feel comfortable enough to share real, true, vulnerable stuff with them? Like I think about our relationship.
Hmm.
We've known each other for 5 years. We started talking day one because we had a similar thing in common, right? Fitness. We were interested in health, fitness, nutrition, that kind of stuff. How long did it take us? I can't remember, so I'm genuinely asking if you remember. How long would you say it took before we got to the point where we could have real conversations about meaningful stuff?
I don't know. I don't recall. I don't recall how long it took. I think right out the gate we kind of got to some of the stuff we were interested in that maybe we wouldn't just normally throw out there. So I feel like we got there pretty quick in one regard. We started doing work, theorizing or working towards fitness related programs, right? Because we had a desire to do more, right? So we're kind of going through some of those layers, but I mean, until we just started having really open and honest, conversations, I don't know with the timeline, but I think that if we had been aware that that was a need and we had been intentional about it, we could have gotten there, sooner. The other thing too, like you referenced being in a gym, you were also in your 20s, right? So perspective, I think, can have a lot to do with it.
Yeah. No, that's true. I think it's also the hard part is even if you go into it with that intention, sussing out that intention in someone else, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like the same as it's effectively it's dating for men, right? It's and I'm generalizing straight men here, right? So if you go to a bar and you're looking at girls, like you're trying to size up, all right, who am I interested in connecting with, and it's the same thing. You don't know if they're going to reciprocate the same way, right? They could shoot you down. And I think it's one thing to be shot down by a girl that doesn't want to talk to you in a bar. That, I mean, like everybody has that happen to them. But to get shot down by another man who doesn't want to be your friend or doesn't want to
Right.
open up to you in the same way, I think that feels like a much more risky proposition.
Yeah, well, don't be freaking weird about it, bro. Don't like
No, but you
roll
you know
up
what I
and
mean.
yeah. No, but what I'm saying is like, yes, I get that, but sure. And that's going to be the outcome if you roll up and you're like, see some dude at the bar and you're like, he looks cool. And hey, man, you want to be my friend and talk about our feelings? Get the fuck out of here, guy. But just, what's up, man? How are you? See some, like, I don't think that it has to be like this big stressful thing, or how do I go about this. Just don't talk about the weather when you see somebody you see regularly. Hey, how's it going, man? Or I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm kind of all over the place right now, but I don't think it's that hard, and I don't think it should be that off-putting. But that's coming from my current perspective, getting ready to turn 40, and where we are in kind of the benefits we've reaped of, identifying that about our relationship and driving towards that, being intentional about it, and then trying to drive that, and help other dudes do that because it's just so valuable.
Yeah, for me, I think the first time I really had an opportunity to open up like that to other guys was actually through a church group.
Hmm.
It was a church I was going to at the time, and they were trying to set up small men's groups, and I wound up falling in with a group of guys, most of whom were much older than me.
Yeah.
And the first couple meetings, I was not fully bought in at all,
Yeah.
right? And then uh, Toby had us, he was one of the guys that was leading this group. He had us over to his house
Hmm.
and we sat around the table and it was basically here's who we are. And guys were just sharing, like, my marriage fell apart. I cheated on my wife.
Yeah.
I have a big problem with drugs and alcohol. And it was like people were just letting everything out. And I'm looking around this table like, oh shit, what am I gonna say, right? Because at the time I'm still
Yeah.
CrossFit coach, elite athlete, have this facade of who I am, and it's a much different picture on the other side of that glass reflecting back at me
Hmm.
when I look in the mirror. And so I started to share more about who I was,
Yeah.
and it was incredibly liberating. But it took that setting and those guys setting that example for me to allow me to step into that as well. And once I did, that changed a lot for me. And ever since then, I've been more forward and just open about who I am because I don't give a shit if you don't like me, right? At this
Right.
point, I don't care. I'm going to tell you who I am because I don't want to have an inauthentic friendship or an inauthentic relationship of any kind with you, right? I don't want you to think that I'm not who I am. If you
Right.
if you're thinking that I'm someone else other than who I truly am, it's not serving either of us, and the whole thing is built on a lie.
Right.
So that's the whole thing is, I think it is terrifying. But if you truly want to connect with other people, you have to let them know up front who you are in it, right? You're not going to walk up and be like, "Hey, my name's Tom. I cry at Disney movies, and I'm, a big softie." Like that's not
Right.
the introduction. But in the course of conversation, if that stuff comes out, I'm not going to try and hide it. And I
Yeah.
think that's the whole thing is just to be genuine, and that's the hardest hurdle to cross, but it's the
Yes.
most important one.
And to your point, I think that if you and I are in a place where we can do that. Personally, we can be open and honest, and we can be, I don't want to say indifferent, right? But we can let it not bother us if somebody doesn't like us or if they think we're weak or less because we do that. Then we have a responsibility to do that, right? Because to your earlier story, you were in that group, and the reason you felt comfortable doing it was because everybody else was doing it. So they led you there, right? And
Yep.
so, so you see somebody, a guy that you're friendly with or whatever, and it's just very much always been, hey, how you doing? How's your team doing? This, that, the other. In a way, just be open and honest with them, and you might build that bridge where they start feeling comfortable doing that, and then they can do that in their circle, and then their friends can do that in their circle, and it just, I mean, it radiates, and it can be contagious, and not to get all sappy or anything, but it just all comes from a place of kindness and understanding, and it doesn't mean I won't punch you in the fucking throat if I have to, But at the end of the day, if I can help you and I can help you carry that load, you're helping me carry that load. And so it's the good of our fellow man and the greater good. There's something about that at some point in your life and in general, or I definitely know in my life where it adds value, it adds meaning, and it helps you, be a little more satisfied with your existence.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, right? So circling back to the idea of soft masculinity, I mean, whoever coined that term, fuck you, I'd punch you in the face, right?
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
soft masculinity. It's just it's being a human. It's
It's being
humanity.
real. Yeah, it's being real.
Exactly. And so that was my point is I don't think it's a fantasy. I think it absolutely can happen, but it is a grassroots effort and it starts with being intentional and being open and honest,
Hmm.
right? If everybody does that and everyone can affect a handful of people, we'll start to grow that and cultivate that and make that more mainstream.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're going to be a little bitch and you're going to be perfect, right? Like, so earlier this week, uh, we had the playoffs for the church volleyball league that I play in.
Uh-oh.
And there was like, I don't know, she was probably a 16, 17-year-old girl refereeing this game, and
Right.
it got a little heated. So I'm one of those guys that has a particularly, it takes a lot to set me off, but once that fuse is lit, it goes very quickly, right? So it was one game apiece. Third game is to 15 points for the win, and she'd already made one horrific call earlier in the game that I was mad about.
Yeah.
And then she made a second call where I went up to block a shot and I saw that the ball was going wide, so I pulled my hands down. The ball hit the antenna, so it got disrupted and then fell out of bounds. So the other team was like, "Oh, he touched it." And she called that I had touched it and gave them a point. And I turned and I just put my hands up and I was like, I didn't fucking touch it. And I probably shouldn't have sworn for one thing, but her response was, I will take um, polite inquiries only, and from the team captain. And in my head, I was thinking, this is not a polite inquiry. This is a statement of a matter of fact, right? But either way, I was boiling. And at the end of the game, I went up to her and I was like, I'm sorry, I got a little heated. And she's like, it happens in the heat of the moment. And I should have stopped there. I should have stopped there, but I didn't, right?
Naturally, why would you?
So I said, you know, in instances like that, you really should ask for help if you're not sure. Basically telling her, you're definitely still wrong, and maybe you should have asked for help,
Yeah.
right? And I realize this looks bad on a lot of levels. It was definitely an asshole thing for me to do. It's church league. It's
Yep. Ooh.
recreational,
Ooh, you dropped an
right?
F-bomb on a church league game?
On a 16-year-old girl who's probably getting, $7 an hour to referee this thing.
Oh,
So
man.
it's wrong on all kinds
Yeah,
of
yeah,
levels.
yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, I would have done the same thing if it was a dude,
Hmm.
regardless of age. That's just in a competitive atmosphere, right?
Right, right.
But the point is, I'm still an asshole,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't change the fact that I'm an imperfect human being, and I
Yeah.
have my moments where I wish that I was different.
Hmm.
But on the whole, I can still make strides to be better, to be gentler, to be more emotive in a positive way,
Yeah. Yeah. And it
right? So the
takes,
the goal is not to be perfect. The goal is not that everyone's going to automatically be, sharing their greatest fears and whatever and having everyone, sing kumbaya and hug. That's not the point. But it's to make small strides to be more open and to be honest, to be able to admit that I'm an asshole for that,
yeah.
right? Instead of trying to just put up my walls and re-fortify my defenses and double down on the fact that no, she was wrong and she deserved everything she got. I think that's where it starts to shift is no, I know I'm an asshole for doing that and I feel bad about it. So it doesn't mean it has to be one way or the other.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like you said, you're not going to be perfect, but what it does do is it takes off some baggage. It's less of a load you have to carry, because we're all screwed up and none of us are perfect. And if you know that and you can accept it and know you're going to be an asshole sometimes, and sometimes you're going to be really emotionally available, and you can empathize with somebody and kind of feel the stress that they're feeling. To me, that's just a much more enjoyable and easier life, an easier path to walk than to throw on a bunch of baggage in addition to all the crap we have to deal with. Worry about maintaining that false facade and worrying about what other people think about you. And if you want to bust out the acoustic and hug a motherfucker, then do it. Or if you need to drop somebody, do it. But you still try to spend more time doing good than harm, right?
Yes, it's time and place and it's progressive, you know, just progressively getting better, incremental improvement. That's the whole thing. And that's why I think, articles like that and conversations around masculinity in general are, I think it's not black and white. It can be both. You can be absolutely competitive and violent in the right arena, but you still have to learn how to let other people in and to unload some of that baggage, as you said, right? You
Yeah.
can't be carrying around all of it at all times. The amount of stress that puts on you is ridiculous. And you don't realize it until you let it go. And that's the thing, when I started talking to that men's group and I realized I just let all that out there. These guys now know stuff about me that in the past I would have been afraid is going to be used against me
Right.
as a way to hurt me or whatever. And nothing happened. Nothing bad happened. And on the flip side, the trust that is built in that group is now much more substantial, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I've been trying to take into relationships. And again, to your point, we haven't got time for bullshit anymore.
Yeah.
So if you want to, all you want to do is talk to me about sports and the weather or whatever, I'm not interested. I'm interested in investing in a relationship that I can gain something from and that I can impart something from, right? It has to be a two-way street. And I think that's where you start to figure that out. Is, when people are like, well, how do you even make friends? How do you, you know, you have that gym buddy or you have that work buddy that you're always talking about how, sports and weather, sports and weather, sports and
Yeah.
weather. If you go in there one day and you say, "Hey man, if you feel that this person has more to offer you, take that risk and go in and say, "Hey man, can I talk to you about something?"
Yeah.
And bring a problem of yours to them and see how they respond, right? So you make that initial overture to say, "I'm willing to open up and be vulnerable." How will you receive this? Will you give me positive feedback? Will you help me either through listening or even offering some advice? Or do you look put off and like, this is not for me, bro, right? And just, all right, cool, not for you, no problem. Catch you later. There's ways to go about that and kind of feel that out. And then once that person sees that wall come down for you, it's a lot easier to just lower that bridge a little bit for them. And
Yeah.
eventually that's how you work into one of those relationships where you can truly talk about the stuff that is taboo among men stereotypically.
Yeah, and let's be honest, we're probably not going to have 35 dudes in our lives, right, that we're at that level with. If it's just
Yeah.
one, that's okay. If it's likely one or two. But a lot of good can come from that still. And part of the reason is we just don't have the bandwidth, whether it's from actual time or emotional, bandwidth to kind of be on that level with 35 different people. You may know a lot of people, right? And you may have a handful of friends, and maybe you'll get there with some of them, but if I spend time thinking about, and worrying about your issues and, trying to provide value in your life. And, there's only so much mental capacity and emotional capacity that you have. So don't feel like it's got to be every dude, start with one and see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And that brings up the difference between friends and acquaintances and close friends, right?
Yeah.
You can have acquaintances where all you talk about is sports and the weather. That's fine. There's a place for it.
Hmm.
But the essential need is to have one person, right? Two, three, great. If you can link them together, even better. And now you have a unit that you can support. We're, forming your own little tribe effectively where you can share those things. It doesn't mean that you have to stay insulated either, because then, if you have three people and they have three people and one of those
Yeah.
people is outside of that initial group, that it doesn't have to mean that your group grows, but the mentality and the way that you approach life, right? That just the way you want to be in the world will continue to grow. And I think that will make us not softer, but more compassionate. And I think that's what we're really missing a lot of is empathy and compassion. And that's where a lot of the conflict is, not just between, people that we know, but especially when you think about people we don't know, you know. And I think overall it has carryover just
Yeah.
to the way that you view the world. If you're able to be more open and shed some of that toxic, just anxiety, stress, whatever you have that you're trying to hold in.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really cool, I find the relationships that reciprocate, right? So like our relationship is very fulfilling. But I know guys that I'm friends with that, you know, I'm always pouring into them, but they're just not able to, or it's a one way relationship, and vice versa. I'm sure you've mentioned some mentors that you have, that likely feels like they're pouring into you more than you're pouring into them, and so there's all different types of these relationships. But for me and from my perspective, the most fulfilling are the ones that are really kind of reciprocate, because I feel like that's where a lot of the growth comes from, personal emotional growth. And then you're able to have more of those relationships where people look to you for that mentorship or support, and it's just easier to start providing that value.
Yeah. So going back to what you were saying, like how people are now starting to come to you and tell you stuff, it's probably they're probably not asking you to share the same, but they just have seen in you through the way that you move in the world, having that perspective of I need to be open and honest, transparent about who I am.
Right.
You can see in someone that is now, all right, this is a real genuine guy that I can ask this type of question to. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I think the transparency and the openness, goes a long way too, because I find that, the older I get, the more direct I am, or not necessarily direct like in a negative way, like overly direct, but if you ask, I'm going to tell you, and it might not be that fun to receive, but it's not bad because you know where it's coming from, right? So, yeah,
Like what?
I
Give an
think it's all
example.
those things.
Give an
Just
example.
like blah. I don't have one off the top of my head, but you say, "Hey, man, I'm having this problem," and da da da, and I'm like, Tom, I got to be honest. From the outside looking in, I think you're the one dropping the ball here, right? The reason you and your wife are fighting is because you won't get your head out of your ass and look up from your phone for 10 minutes. You know, have you tried being intentional about spending time with her, setting aside a little bit of time? Share with her the stress you're under. Share with her all the different things you're trying to do. Be open, talk about it, and then come to an understanding. How can I make this better for you, but not neglect the things I need to pay attention to? And so that's just completely random. That's not a conversation you and I have had. It's a completely random example, but it's just like that, and like, I love you, man. So I'm going to tell you, you're screwing up and you probably should fix this if your marriage is important to you.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And you need men like that in your life. You need men like that in your life who can shoot it straight.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're going to sit there and, just like the volleyball example, you can justify anything to yourself. Well, I'm on my phone because I work all day and I want to come home and just be by myself. Well, then yeah, she's got a legitimate beef with you. You're in a
Yeah.
marriage, you have a relationship, you have obligations and expectations, right? So it comes down to a hard conversation. And a lot of times, if you don't have someone there to give you that type of counsel and be honest about deep shit, you're gonna find yourself, where did I go wrong? Why
Yeah.
am I facing a divorce? Or in that case, right? But it could be anything. Why? Because you didn't have anyone to run things by and check in with, and just check yourself. Because convincing yourself that you're doing the right thing is the easiest thing in the world, man. We've both been there.
Oh,
Whether
absolutely.
it's an addiction or, just any other vice
Hmm.
or personal failing. We don't like to see ourselves as failures on any level. And so it's covering that up. Whew, unless you have someone to call you on your bullshit, you get me in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I like to say, and so, as a student of, I consider myself a student of leadership and life in general, and spending a lot of time, years and years in leadership roles and management roles. There's this thing I like to say all the time, and I don't know if I've coined it or not, or if I heard it somewhere else. If I coined it, that's awesome. You heard it here first. But it's that, the more hard conversations you have, the less hard conversations you'll have. And what I mean by that is, like, yeah, initially a lot of us, regardless of our personality type, don't love conflict, right? For one reason or another. But the more of these quote unquote hard conversations where you might have to tell somebody something that they're not going to love to hear, the more of those you have, the less of them you have, because they're just not hard anymore. You're like, okay, well, you may take offense. You may get mad at me. You may say screw me and hang up on me or walk away or whatever, but that's okay. I did what I needed to do, and I shared my perspective and what I saw to be the truth with you. And how you respond is how you respond. If you need a little time to cool off and come back, that's fine. If not, whatever. But I'm here for you when you need it. So the more hard conversations you have, the less hard conversations you have.
And that is soft masculinity in a nutshell. So,
Fuck soft masculinity. I'll kick the shit out of it, bro.
and I think that's my take too. I mean,
Yeah,
fuck soft masculinity. That's not a thing. That is not a thing.
it's not
There's
a thing.
humanity, and there's, just recognizing that, hey man, we're all in this together. So, you can either be a douchebag and try and hide from it, or have someone tell you you're a douchebag, confirming your own suspicions that you're trying to buffer with some facade, and, start making some changes. So, yeah, anyway, I'm glad you kind of saw that the same way I did, but
Yeah.
that just put me on a weird path this morning. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Get out of
Get
here.
out of here. Yeah.
Get out of here.
Get out of here.
Anyway, yeah, man. I think that's kind of wrap on that. But
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff as always, man.
yeah, it took our whole this quick hit weekly was all one topic, and it
Yeah, man.
pretty stayed on track. So I'm impressed with us, honestly. Usually we're all over the road on these,
Just a little more
but
focused, I think. So that's good.
that's it. All right, man. Well, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and yeah, I'll catch you Monday.
Sounds good. Take care, man.
All right, homie. See ya.
All right. Bye.